What's going on, guys? Sharpshot here. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. So today's video I'm going to be breaking down and giving my thoughts on the January 2022 mid-chapter developer update. With this update, Behavior has announced a ton of changes coming into the future of DBD. Some of the more notable ones are the matchmaking optimizations, the solo survivor buff, the wiggle update, the grade rewards, and obviously the perk and the add-on changes for the killer and survivor side. I'm really looking forward to these changes being added into DBD, but yeah, without further ado, let's get right into the video. This is part one. Just to quickly summarize it, anything with future in it, so future patch optimizations, future matchmaking, any of this is future in it is going to be added in the future, not in this next coming mid-chapter update. It's going to be something that they're just thinking about and planning. They just want to keep it real with us and kind of just tell us way in advance. They did all the future stuff first, so let's do the future stuff first. So coming in the future will be the patch optimization plans. This is kind of a technical thing. It's not really going to affect DBD, but they're going to restructure how the game is coded or whatever and make it so that the file size is actually smaller, and in total is going to save about 18 gigabytes on PC. So this is going to make downloading new updates way faster. Whenever there's a new update, only a chunk of the game is updated, so you only download that new chunk. So they're going to make the chunks smaller. So they're saying that's going to save about 50% more time. And then with the restructuring of the game to minus 18 gigs, that's going to in total make it 200% faster every update. So all the updates and the file size is going to be smaller. So that's a pretty big win. I'm kind of happy about that. Here we have the matchmaking optimization plans. They're going to be editing how the skill-based matchmaking in the MMR is done. They hear the issues and the complaints about SBMM that the community has, and they kind of want to fix that. And they said that they've made a behind-the-scenes change to try and improve SBMM. I don't know why they didn't release this to the public, but anyways, they made it so that the default rating for first-time players, they lowered it. So new players play with less experienced players than they did before, because apparently they found out that first time players were playing against like red rank gods because of the default level. So that's not good. So they changed that behind the scenes. But the improvements that they're going to make with matchmaking optimization, there's 4 of them. There's backfill improvements. Whenever someone leaves a lobby in solo queue, they prefer a quick replacement rather than a quality replacement. Say there's a bunch of survivors in queue, they'll find the next man up regardless of the skill level, instead of finding the skill level that is appropriate for the lobby. So for example, someone leaves the lobby and someone way out of the skill level, like a red rank god, joins in because they're the next man up, but it's a lobby full of bronze players. That doesn't work. So instead, lobby times will be a little bit longer, but they'll find a replacement that is a bronze player or near that skill level. Skill levels are going to be more or less the same in solo queue. Hopefully, if someone leaves. Disconnection handling, I don't know how this is going to work, but SBMM doesn't handle DCs well, whatever that means. And they're trying to adjust the SBMM to better handle it. So I don't know if that's going to mean bigger penalties to your skill level or bigger bans. I don't know what that means, but I guess we'll see down the line. Extended breaks. Whenever someone takes a break from the game for a really long time, like say like a month or an entire season, you come back, you're shit at the game, right? You're rusty, you're not good. As it stands right now, your SBMM doesn't change no matter how long you're away from the game. And that doesn't make sense, right? Because you're going to come back, you're going to be worse than you were when you left. They're going to find a way to gradually lower your SBMM the more time you're away from the game, so that when you do come back, you won't be playing against rank 1 gods like you left the game at. You'll be playing against people that aren't as good, so you'll be able to acclimate yourself to the game again. So that's good. And then finally, general improvements. This one is basically about your connection to servers and widening your player base so you can queue in faster. So for example, say you're in the middle between 2 servers. Say you're in the middle between NA East and NA Central. I don't know if those are actual servers, but say you're right in the middle. Right now, you're only able to connect to 1 server. So you're only able to connect to NA East or only NA Central, whatever it may be. But now if you're near the 2, they want to widen it so that you can be connected to Central and East. It's better for you because you're able to find matches at your skill level quicker, and other players in each region are gonna have more players to get into their games. So that's good. So it'll just make queue times a little bit faster, and it'll have more people to connect to you at the same skill level. I actually think these matchmaking optimizations are actually pretty good, and it'll make SBMM somewhat better. Even though SBMM I still think is shit and should be removed from the game. That's that. Another future, the solo survivor experience. Listen to this one. This is a very interesting one. DBD did some experiments behind the scenes, that they collected some data and found that as the skill level increases for survivors, the escape rate gap increases between squad with friends and solo queue. At the highest MMR, squad with friends were escaping 15% more of the time than solo queues. So that's a pretty big difference. The gap was getting bigger as the skill level was getting bigger. DBD didn't like that, and I don't like that either as a solo queue. It fucking sucks. They're in a dilemma here. They can't balance killers around pre-made groups because then the solo survivors will be left behind. But on the other hand, you can't balance the solo survivors and buff them up to the level of pre-made groups, because then the killers will have such a shit time between both groups. They want to give information a tiny buff to solo survivors, but not enough that it's full communication like squad with friends. What they were proposing, and they said it a million times, it's a very early peak and then it's might get scrapped entirely. Please keep in mind that none of this is final or confirmed. It might get scrapped. Basically, they're covering their asses if it's a shit idea, but I actually think it's a good idea. But what they're gonna do, they're gonna implement a status icon next to each survivor portrait in the HUD that lets you know what each survivor is doing. So for example, if a survivor is on a gen, it'll show a gen icon. If they're doing a totem, they're gonna show a totem. If they're healing, they're healing. They're gonna show icons for all of those, but they're not gonna show you like where they're doing it. They're just going to show you what they're doing. So it gives you a little bit, an inkling of information that you didn't have before. So it keeps you in the loop about what your survivors are doing without giving you OP information, which I think is a really, really good implementation. And I really hope that it gets added to the game. Moving on to the updates that are actually going to come into the next mid-chapter update. We've got a new betas tab. There's going to be a beta tabs in the settings that you can opt in or opt out. And whenever they want to experiment with stuff in the real game, for example, when they did the SBMM tests in the live matches, in the live build, it happened to everybody, but now they're going to make it so you can opt in or opt out. And a great example of this, which I'll talk about in a little bit, is the Wiggle update. They're going to make Wiggle's skill checks. So when that test is going to go live, you can opt in and try it out, or you can opt out and not try it out. But if you opt in, you're going to be awarded bonus blood points for doing so for the first couple matches that you play with this beta activated. So that's pretty cool. But speaking of the beta and the first beta that they're going to test, the Wiggle skill check updates. Instead of spamming left, right on your controller and going AD back and forth on your keyboard, to make it more accessible for everybody, they want to change it to skill checks. So this will make wiggling a lot easier. And basically what they're going to do, if you hit the bottom ones, it's like a bottom windshield. But if you hit the top ones and you miss them, it goes up top. So that's how they work. Good skill checks only give you normal speed. And then great skill checks do give you a boost in the speed of the wiggling. And failing a wiggle, so if you hit LB and you miss the skill check, nothing happens. You don't get a penalty. And if you don't do anything, nothing happens either. Finally, the last thing they're going to implement right in the mid-chapter update is going to be the toggle interactions. Instead of, for example, holding your LB button on controller for the entirety of a gen when you're working on it, you're going to be able to tap it to start it. And whenever you want to leave the gen, you can tap away. So instead of holding, it's another accessibility thing to make the game more accessible. There's also an option that's going to make it so that you can cancel interactions by just sprinting. It's going to be really cool because, listen, you click to start a gen, right? You have this hand free, and then all you have to do is click for skill checks, right? And then you even set it at the bottom. With this free hand now, you can take a sip of your water, but of course, be warned that they will always pop a skill check right when you put your hands away. So you're always going to get a skill check anyways, so don't put all hands free. That was the part one. At the forefront of this part two, basically to remove the Bubba masks. For those of you guys that don't know what they look like, here are the Bubba masks. If you killed as Bubba the original survivors 25 times, you got a mask for them. They removed it because of the race issues and how a lot of people were thinking that this was portraying blackface with Claudette. A lot of the community didn't like that, so they didn't want any hate or any of that stuff in the community, so they just decided to remove it. And anybody who's ever played Bubba, whether you got the masks or not, is going to be awarded 6,000 iridescent shards to compensate for that. Grade rewards revisited. If you guys didn't know, they switched ranks to grades a couple months ago. The grade system doesn't put you into matches. It's a blood point reward system. And if you reach a certain grade at the end of the season, you get rewarded blood points for reaching that grade. So for example, the maximum you can get on one side, if you reach iridescent 1 or rank 1, you got 250,000 blood points. So in total, if you got Eerie 1 on both sides, you get 500k blood points. They did the research. We know as players, the grind, the amount of games to get there, the amount of hours it took to get to rank 1 on both sides, and the reward you get for the time you put in is not worth it at all. So they're gonna increase the grade rewards in the January 13th season. I mean, hey, there's no complaints for that. If you're complaining about free blood points, you gotta look at yourself in the fucking mirror, because you are a big ass complainer. They made a ton of add-on changes in the last developer update. They saw a positive reaction. I don't know from who. Just kidding. I think they were mostly pretty good. And they decided to make a tradition. So every developer update, they're going to be making add-on tweaks and changes. Adrenaline Vial, they reduced the rush turn rate penalty to 55% when it was 50% beforehand. Carburetor Tuning Guide, they reduced the movement speed penalty to 2%, which was 4%. Depth Gauge Rake, they reduced the movement speed penalty to 2%, which was 4%. Iridescent Flesh, they lowered the maximum tantrum duration to 5 seconds, and it was 8. Long Guide Bar, finally, they increased the time before tantrum by 2 seconds, which was 1. Solvent Jug, they increased the duration of invigoration by 2 seconds, and it was 1. Robin Feather, they decreased the cooldown by 40%, and it was 30%. Flask of Bleach, they increased the hindered effect by 4%, and it was 5%. Redhead Pinky Finger, his most OP add-on in my opinion. They reduced the bottle count by 2. Ooh, that fucking sucks. Amanda's Letter, they reduced the available reverse bear traps by 2, and it was 3. Last Will, they increased the time to charge an ambush attack by 33%, and it was 66%. Iridescent Pendant, they increased the exposure duration to 45 seconds, and it was 30. Baby Teeth, they increased the blindness duration to 30 seconds, and it was 15. Madeline's Scarf increased Victor's movement speed by 0.3, and it was 0.4. Toy Sword, which is arguably one of her best, they decreased the pounce charge time by 0.2 seconds, and it was 0.25. Stale Biscuit, they decreased the pounce cooldown by 0.4 seconds, and it was 0.5. Iridescent Umbrella, increased the duration of expose effect to 60, and it was 30. Shattered Star Badge, they increased the zombie movement speed by 150% for 60 seconds instead of 100% for 60 seconds. Marvin's Blood, arguably one of his best, increased mutation rate by 25% instead of 33%. Mikhail's Eye, they increased the zombie movement speed by 35% instead of 50. Wooden Box, they increased the undetectable duration to 30 seconds, and it was 15 seconds. Iridescent Family Crest, increased the range to 24 meters when it was 12 meters. Moving on to the perk updates. Boil Over, the effects of wiggling are increased from 50-75 to 100%, from 25-50 to 75%. It's always 16 meters where they block the range. It was 14 at tier 3, but now it's 16 for all tiers. They added a nice little bonus here that if the killer draws from a height while carrying you, you instantly get a 25% wiggle bonus. Moving on to Distortion, they upped the number of tokens that you start with to 4. You start with 3, so they added an extra token. Remember Me, anytime the obsession loses a health state, you get 1 token, rather than it being the criteria of a basic attack. Wake Up, they've increased the gate opening speed from 5, 10, 15 to 15, 20, 25. Gearhead, the criteria for Gearhead, it was too much you had to do for such a little reward. So they're going to be reworking the perk, and basically whenever a survivor loses a health state, Gearhead activates, and the next time a survivor hits a great skill check while repairing, Their aura is revealed for 6, 8, and 10 seconds, and then the gearhead deactivates. Power struggle will activate and you'll be able to drop pallets at 25, 20, or 15% of the wiggle progress instead of 35, 30, 25. Buckle up. The aura reading duration is increased to 6, 8, and 10 seconds instead of 4, 5, 6 seconds. Whoop de gas. They're increasing the lunge distance to 70, 75, and 80% instead of 40, 50, and 60%. It's furtive. I don't know how to spell. No, it used to be that if the obsession dies, you lose all of your tokens and that perk is gone for the rest of the trial, but they're removing that criteria. So even if the obsession dies, you're still going to be able to keep your tokens for the remainder of the trial. That man's switch, they remove the criteria for that. It needs to be the obsession that gets hooked. Now it's that anybody that gets hooked, regardless of their obsession or whatnot. This is the biggest buff on the killer side for sure. And then the biggest buff on the survivor side, definitely boil over. So I'm interested to see how people are going to be using boil over, and I'm interested to see how survivors are going to be able to counter dead man switch. So yeah guys, that was the breakdown of the January 2022 mid-chapter update. Let me know what you guys think about this major update coming to DBD and what your guys' favorite change is of this whole entire update. I'm really curious to see what your guys' opinions are on that. Overall, I'm actually really excited for all of these changes to be added to DBD, and I'm especially excited about the solo survivor buff because I think it'll make solo queue a lot more tolerable. It isn't too OP as compared to squad with friends, so killers won't have too hard of a time against solo queue like before. So yeah guys, that's been the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you're new. This has been Sharp Shot, and I will see you guys in the next video.